Social media personality David Meessen is with me here on Lunchtime Live. David, you describe yourself as a dating expert for men, is that right?
Yeah, dating and relationships, yeah.
Dating and relationships. Life coach, is that the area it's in?
Yes.
Yeah. How did you get into it?
Long story. So I was married to somebody who wasn't right for me. That was a painful learning experience. Not necessarily because there was anything wrong with her or with me. I think it was just a lack of compatibility. And I was working for a tech company here in Dublin at the time, and I met somebody who was in this dating and relationship space for many years. He probably could have been a coach himself. He's just a bit more of a private person. He became a mentor of mine. I started learning from him. I learned from people in the personal development field, in the relationship field. I'm not a doctor or a psychologist. I'm certified by the Irish Life Coach Institute. But I had a great variety of different teachers. And so I experienced a lot of pain in my relationship because I believe there's a lot of women who suffer in relationships. Men do as well, if they're not right for each other. And I realized I always liked coaching. I was coaching karate at Meessen University many years ago.
Okay.
Always liked working with people. And now I've worked with men from 30 countries and helped them find someone to get a better social life.
You're from Germany, living in Ireland, but went to college in Maynooth, is that? Yeah, that's the round trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So how do you help, as you describe it, and on your Instagram or social media sites, how do you help men find the right woman?
Yeah, so first of all, they have to become aware of what do they actually want. It's very difficult to hit a target if you don't even know what you're aiming for. Most people, and that applies to men and women, we just stumble into relationships because we meet somebody who happens to be at work, in the social circle, but the probability that you're going to find somebody who's actually right for you if you're not really aiming for compatibility in values and personality is very low. So the first thing is, who am I? What do I stand for? What are my values? And then find somebody who believes the same as I believe. Because it's very difficult if you have to have fundamental discussions around values all the time. So what do I want? And then it's about creating more options, right? You can meet people on dating apps, you can meet people in person, get more dates, then learn how to communicate effectively on dates. And a lot of that is around authenticity, because I'm sure you've heard this nice guys finish last, which is absolute nonsense, because I don't think there's anything wrong with being nice. But I'm sure you'd agree, and you can tell me whether you do or not. What women don't like is men who are fake, who agree when they don't feel like agreeing. Being nice is amazing. How are you going to have any relationship if you can't be nice or kind? But they don't want somebody who's fake. And so help them improve the communication. How do I communicate my needs on a eye-level relationship type of way? Because most men or women, they end up either the slave or the relationship, the slave or the tyrant in a relationship where it's not truly on eye level. They can't communicate their needs, because if I communicate a need and I'm afraid she or he won't be able to meet it, and then I'm faced with the possibility of losing that person, well, that makes it very difficult for me to communicate that. But if I don't communicate my needs, I won't be happy.
So is it do you describe it in the category of, is it kind of uber masculinity? Is it nowhere near that? What level would you put it on, or what tier?
What do you mean by uber masculinity?
I know, I'm just trying to get a sense of when you talk about the power struggle, element of it. What is it about men being more masculine? Is it not about that? Is it?
Yeah, so I think we all, men and women, we all have masculine and feminine energy in us, right? To varying degrees. And absolutely it's about men being more masculine. Now, that being said, people interpret that in very, very different ways. I don't think there's one clear definition for what that means.
You don't mean control?
No, absolutely not. No, I don't think anybody should control anybody in a relationship. Because that's not the aim of the game. Do you want to be in a relationship with a slave? No, you don't want to be. That, first of all, is disrespectful to the person. Second of all, that's not good for you. People are in that relationship. There are men who are in relationships with women who are trying to control the lady. The opposite is also definitely true. That's not going to make you happy. No, you want to have a relationship on eye level. It's not, these are my rules and you have to adhere to them. No, but this is how I want to live my life. Oh, you want to live your life 80-90% the same way? That's great. We have a lot of compatibility. And then the rest we can negotiate.
So you think, it's finding the balance, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Balance, but
yeah, of course.
The balance in what both people want.
Yeah, I believe in individual happiness. So, and individual happiness is absolutely individual. Some people, if we talk about this idea of gender roles, traditional gender roles, for some people they're great, for some people they're not so great, right? And I think people got to find their own way.
You run courses, is that right? Beyond your social media sites, you held a seminar, would that be the right description for it, in Dublin last weekend? Was it a sort of a covert seminar, or was it kind of restricted, the details around it? I was struggling to find out.
What do you mean by covert?
Was it did people know initially where it was happening? Was it advertised?
It was very much advertised. The location we only gave to the people who actually signed up for it. But everything else was pretty evident, yeah.
So you advertised is it a coaching day? Is that how
it was a coaching day. It was like a free seminar. It was a bit long. It was 9 hours.
Right.
And we covered a lot of stuff. Yeah. More than we'd be able to fit on a website.
Okay. So you sign up, so you were going to run the event for 9 hours in Dublin, and then you only found out where it was happening when you registered for it.
Exactly.
Right?
Yes.
And why is that, out of curiosity?
Because we didn't know who was going to show up. I mean, we had security, but we didn't know who was going to show up.
Well, what would the concern be about people showing up?
Just a security concern.
Is that something you've had to deal with previously, or?
It was a recommendation by consultants, yeah.
To have
security for sure, because you don't know, because it was a free event. We didn't ask anybody to pay for it.
Okay. So, is there anything in particular that you're worried about, like, as in...
No.
No, just do consultants advise you to have security at the event?
Yeah, like in any event you would.
Okay. So it's a coaching seminar on dating, on values.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of these things. So one of the first exercises we did was write down, who am I? Where am I going? What kind of a person do I want in my life? Exactly the same thing that women should be doing as well. What do I want in a man? What am I absolutely not willing to tolerate in a man? And that's exactly that, because you get an understanding of what you want. Then, how do I create more options? We talked about a lot of things. We talked about boundaries. We talked about how do I actually start a conversation in a respectful way. A lot of things, yeah.
Okay. And it went on for 9 hours.
It did, yeah.
Of coaching. How do you measure success in something like this?
Defined by the individual client's goals. So almost all clients who come to me, they actually want to find a relationship. They don't just want to have fun, right? They actually want to have a relationship. But the way you find a relationship is you create a couple of options for yourself first. Dating is the way to find a relationship. That's the difference between me and some other people out there, and I'm not going to talk bad about anybody by name. I'm not interested in that. But some people, they advertise, let's call it intimacy, as the end goal, having intimacy with as many women as possible. That's not really satisfying. That's not really good for anybody in the long term. I mean, people should do whatever they want, right? But what you really want is you want to have a relationship, but you got to get a little bit of experience and you got to get some options to be able to choose somebody, because otherwise you're not going to end up with that person. So it's about creating options and then choosing somebody, and then she chooses you. She does the exact same thing, and then you overlap.
So that's the kind of, I suppose, exercises, if you want to call it that you talk about, or that you were doing.
Yeah, one of many things. Yeah.
Yeah, one of many. Okay. Is there an age profile typically that might, it's mainly men? It's all men, is it?
It's mostly men. Yeah, my fiance was there. My brother's fiance was there, just because family. Yeah. But it's mainly men. Yes.
It's mainly men. And
I do work with women on a one-on-one basis, but I have like one-on-one programs, group programs. But with women, I can only work on a one-on-one basis. Okay.
Yeah. I was reading. Obviously, I wasn't there. I wasn't at the event, but I did read some commentary about it afterwards. As I suppose in summary, and to quote, not to misquote anybody, but I suppose it was described as being a kind of a wholesome mix of practical advice about people talking openly and honestly about what they want, and dealing with the impacts of maybe relationship breakdown, but that there was also a measure of misogyny in there as well.
I read that as well, yeah.
How does that sit with you?
I don't even know what that word means.
Misogynistic?
Yeah, I don't even know. But maybe it's because English is my second language, but I don't even know what that word means.
So it's for you, it's not about talking or preaching, maybe isn't the right word, but that sort of the alpha male idea, like, is that...
No, I think I'm different to that, because what does that mean? I think, from my understanding, and I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but an alpha male was back in the day when we as human beings lived in tribes of a couple 100,000 people. It was the tribal leader, right? Every tribe had a leader. Well, nowadays, who's the leader of a tribe? I mean, the country has a leader, but like a lot of this alpha male idea is a bit like, I'm going to tell women what to do. And that's not what I stand for.
That's not what the courses are about. It's not sort of prejudice against women or...
Now, how are you going to have a relationship with somebody if you're prejudiced against them? Because if you have a prejudice against somebody, you tell yourself a story. You see the story. You see the beliefs. It's like any type of prejudice, right? Men towards women, women towards men, people towards different countries. If you have a prejudice, you look at the person through the lens of a story, and you don't actually see the person themselves. You can't have a real relationship.
So, like the term alpha male, we read about it a lot online. We hear about it an awful lot in more recent, I suppose, in the last 2 years, I'd say in particular. And the connotations that are associated with that. And I think for some people, maybe listening to this, and when they even talk about it on social media as well, the concept of really helping men to find the perfect woman, their dream ideal partner, that sort of type of masculinity, if you want to call it that, the success that's nearly associated with it. People often associate success along with assets, like, the car you're driving, the house you have, all of this kind of stuff. Like, people often put that in the same category as Andrew Tate, and I'm not suggesting at all that that's the category that you're in or anywhere near that. But how does that sit with you?
What specifically?
The whole, I've seen online commentators jokingly sort of refer to you as Irish Andrew Tate.
I read that, I read that. What in the name of Andrew
you?
Tate is going on? I don't particularly take comments on the internet too serious, no.
Doesn't that wouldn't...
In the beginning it did. I've been in the social media game for a bit now. In the beginning you take that to heart. At some point not so much. I also think if people make commentary online, it really depends on the details, right? But I don't tend to get hung up on that. I like to talk to people in person, and I think if we were to have more human-to-human conversations, we could find actually a lot more overlap than shouting at each other online, But it's not... Regarding the masculinity thing, it depends on how we define that. I think men and women, we all have masculine and feminine energy in us. And there's different definitions of it. But one of the defining characteristics of masculinity, if you will, and we all have that in us, is a degree of being able to disagree. And you shouldn't disagree with somebody because it's a manipulative tactic. But what you want to do is it comes down to communicating your needs. If you want to be happy in a relationship, you got to stand up for that. Most men can't even do that. Most men are scared of shit of women. Not from a physical point of view, but from an emotional perspective. Most men can't even... What do most men look like when they go out on a night? They drink a shit ton of alcohol, hoping they'd be able to introduce themselves once at night. Because they're really super scared of rejection. Most men. But then we see the other extreme of this, you should tell women what to do. That's the other extreme. Because the pendulum usually swings. If you have a trend, you have a counter trend. And I don't think either extreme is healthy.
Just to leave off the online aspect of it, like the idea of sort of being jokingly referred to as Irish Andrew Tate, like how do you feel about that?
I don't feel anything about that.
Nothing.
I mean, like my opinion on, is it the Tato thing or is it the Andrew Tate thing? Because these are two different things.
I think it's very much the Andrew Tate comparison. Is that not? Would that not at all bother you?
Well, the thing is, it's very difficult for me to say. Well, we have to look at the details. It's like, how am I different or how am I the same? It depends on each individual point of view. I think with any person that exists on the planet, you can find certain degrees of overlap, and with some you have a lot, with some you have very, very little. But I've gotten, the number one hate comment I get online is, he's a ginger. Like, I've gotten really horrendous hate comments. That's really the soft stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
I suppose it's the idea of, men looking for help, and I don't mean looking for help. I mean, obviously people use dating websites, everything, but it's not that. I suppose it's the commentary maybe to men in terms of finding dates or helping people to find dates and what's associated with that. And I wonder, is that maybe where people are taking the comparison from somewhat?
It could be. People are making a lot of comparisons, yeah. But I think that's what women should do as well. You should get a degree of dates or a certain amount of dates until you find somebody who's right for you. Anybody should do that. Now, I've had clients who are so religious, they don't want to have any intimacy before marriage at all, and that's also fine. Again, it's individual happiness. I'm not here to prescribe what anybody should or shouldn't do, but there are certain best practices when it comes to communication, when it comes to authentic communication, and you're obviously a very, very skilled communicator, and communication always depends on the context. And if we violate those rules, the probability that we'll have a successful outcome, as in we'll figure out whether there's compatibility or not in that relationship, is a lot lower.
Okay. Some of the listeners tuned into us at the moment, David, have a couple of questions for you. This listener is wondering, does David advocate not showing vulnerability? I'm just curious, because as a person who found the love of their life and married him at 41 just 2 years ago, I can say that vulnerability is key.
100%. Agree. Absolutely.
Show vulnerability.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, can I qualify for a real quick second? Just really briefly. vulnerability, yes, but that doesn't mean that you need to go and talk about your traumatic past on a first date. I don't think any woman wants to hear that. So vulnerability, there's a degree of timing. The first time you meet somebody, you don't unleash all your trauma. So absolutely a degree of authenticity and vulnerability is required. But the more you get to know somebody, the more you share with them, gradually.
Jonathan in Dublin is wondering, he says, you're both talking about relationships as if relationships are heterosexual when a man meets a woman, etc. What about the same-sex relationships?
Personally, no experience. I'm sure a lot of the same rules apply. I have family members who have homosexual relationships. Again, all men and all women, whether they're homosexual or heterosexual, they have masculine and feminine energy. I just have no personal experience with it.
Just in general, the reaction that you get, online, and look, you have obviously a very large following between Instagram and Twitter and on Facebook as well, or on X as well. Are you surprised by some of the reaction that you get or commentary?
I've been very surprised about a lot of reactions over the years, yeah.
Negatively or positively?
Both.
Both. And in what way, David?
Some are extraordinarily positive. Some are, you've changed my life. With clients, I see it. And even just with people who watch my content, they say, okay, I was able to find somebody. That's amazing. I was able to have a conversation where I was able to be more honest. And then some people say, like, really violent stuff, yeah. And it's not nice to read these things online, but you realize if somebody talks bad about you online, and I'm sure you must have received some of that over the years yourself without knowing you, they're coming from a place of pain. Because I'm pretty confident that I can sit down with most people on the planet, not with everybody, and find a degree of common ground and be able to explain things in a very human way. But it's very easy to prejudge something if you just hear it from the outside.
Okay, all right, listen, social media personality and dating expert David Meessen. David, thank you for joining us here
thank you so much.
On Lunchtime Live today.